Yeah, thumbs up and a nod. There you go. I got a thumbs up from you and nod from Matt, so we're good to go. Hey, this is almost said miserable, a little bit miserable night to be driving to Bible study, so thanks for doing that. Lots of traffic, a lot of rain. We won't complain about the rain, but thanks for being here. You're a real encouragement when you show up on Wednesday nights. One of my favorite times of the week. So last week, my warm-up was talking about me being a Jeopardy nerd and me scrutinizing and critiquing the interview part of Jeopardy and how David would have had so much to say about that. Here's what my son sent me after that. A AI-generated picture of Alex Trebek with Moses, David, and Esther, plagues, miracles, and commandments. So AI being put to good use by my son's generation. He said, "Here, use this in your class." I said, "Well, it's too late now, but I'm going to use it anyway." I don't know if you've seen the AI-generated stuff is really popular. If Daniel had a cell phone, and if Noah had a cell phone. Well, there's one, if David had a cell phone, it's this young guy running around, filming himself and with Goliath in the background. I was going to go ahead and try to show that, but then I watched it and there were so many things wrong with it. Just scripturally wrong with it. I'm not going to show that. But I do have a warm-up for us tonight, and I want you to think about if you were forced to go on a reality show, your 15 minutes of fame, which of those reality shows would you pick to go on? In other words, what do you think, I really love that, but really, what would I be really good at? I think I could do that. I think I maybe could win that. I think I could represent pretty well. And you have to vote for at least one, okay? What is wife swap? Good question. I'm proud of you for asking that question, Tony. But we're going to see. This is where people swapped wives. Did you ever see that? You didn't DVR that? Come on.
I've never heard of this show.
Very good. Very good. I don't think it's still on. But you have to vote for one. You can vote for all if you think I can do great on all of these, but you have to vote for one. How many people would pick wife swap? Do not raise your hand, okay? We're starting with the ones that you really shouldn't probably admit to. The Real Housewives of Tampa. Anyone think, I could do well on that show? Good. Now we're getting into it. Dancing with the Stars. Okay, we got a couple. Good. We got several. Nice. My wife, me and Martha, will not raise our hands on that one. America's Got Talent. Remember, you have to vote for one. Okay, got a couple for America's Got Talent. See, I would love to know what your talent would be, but I'm not going to ask that question.
I want to know.
Tell Melanie afterwards. Where are we? Swamp People. Okay, yeah, of course, because you are the swamp guy. Yeah. Survivor. I think when I was younger, I could have done all right on Survivor. I wouldn't do it now. I don't want to get off my couch now, but Master Chef, any cooks? Ooh, okay, here we go. Yeah, I'm agreeing with some of you guys too. I've tasted your food. Yeah, absolutely. American Pickers? Okay. What is it?
They go and find the Coca-Cola.
They go buy Americana memorabilia, basically junk, and then resell it. Yeah. Yep. And then finally, The Amazing Race. How many of you think that'd be good? I think that would be, in some ways, fun to be on The Amazing Race. Martha keeps saying me and my daughter need to be on The Amazing Race. I would never get out of Tampa Airport. I am the worst at directions, but okay. So you watch those things, and it's all about people who get put in situations like, okay, this is a little bit different for them. How are they going to respond? What are they going to do? How are they going to act? As we get into the story of David, including tonight's story, you see David in some very unusual situations. What's he going to do? Here's his 15 minutes of fame, which of course for David stretches into a whole lifetime. But what's he going to do in this moment, in this very stressful environment? What's he going to do? Okay, which brings us up to where we left off last week. Remember last week I talked about the most famous battles of all, and I think it was Dave who mentioned the thrilla in Manila, and then there was also the rumble in the jungle. This is the rally in the valley, the Elah Valley, Goliath versus David. Which I think is the most famous battle in the history of battles. If people don't know anything about the Bible, they know that David and Goliath is in the Bible. Everybody knows this story. We left off last week, Goliath is taunting the Israelites. David's older brothers are there at the battle. Jesse, David's dad, sends David with some supplies for his brothers. And we get to 1 Samuel chapter 17, verse 8. There's still a little bit of review, because remember last week I read this while I was standing at 9.5 feet tall, if you remember that. But Goliath stood and shouted to the ranks of Israel, "Why do you come up and line up for battle?" So apparently the Israelites, put this in your mental hopper, they're lined up for battle. "Am I not a Philistine, and are you not the servants of Saul?" Not the servants of God, servants of Saul. "Choose a man and have him come down to me. If he's able to fight and kill me, we will become your subjects. But if I overcome him and kill him, you will become our subjects and serve us." Then the Philistine said, "This day I defy the ranks of Israel. Give me a man, and let us fight each other." Goliath is making some version of that same taunt for 40 days. Twice a day. For 40 days of disgrace. Goliath comes out day after day, week after week, with this same challenge, asking for a champion. Israelites, send me a champion to fight me. And of course, the Israelites naturally are kind of looking to their champion, who is their king, Saul. Remember why they wanted a king? A couple reasons. One, they're looking to Saul, one, because he's their king, and they wanted a king to lead them into battle. We want a king to kind of help us fight our battles and kind of be the guy. We need the guy. Plus, Saul was their giant. Who was the tallest guy in Israel? Head and shoulders above. It was Saul. Saul is their giant. So this giant walks into the valley, challenges the Israelites. They're looking to their tallest guy, their champion, their supposed champion. The Israelites are placing their hope in King Saul, which is to be expected. And they're kind of waiting for Saul to come out of his tent, accept the challenge, fight Goliath. That's what they expect. That's where their hope is. That's what they're watching for. That's what they're waiting for. Let me step sideways for just a minute. I said this last week, and I said, I'm not going to do this every week, but I'm going to do it this week. Let me be a preacher for just a minute. We place our hope in things. We place our hope in people that we trust, okay? We place our hope in the things and the people that we trust, and when those people disappoint us, not only is the trust broken, but we start losing hope pretty quickly. In fact, when that trust is broken, when someone disappoints us, it's really easy to go from, okay, I'm kind of counting on this person, I'm trusting this person, to, ooh, this person is really not just disappointed me, but I'm upset. And it's easy to start kind of despising that person. That's why so many people of all ages really sort of resent their parents from time to time. Because they put their trust in their parents, they put their hope in their parents, and then when the parent disappoints them, they get upset. You never placed a lot of hope in the family next door, right? Growing up, you didn't trust the family next door. So your kids were always really nice to the family next door, right? I mean, they were polite to the family next door. Their parents would make them so mad, but they were so nice to the family next door, which would make the parents so mad, because it's like, why are you being so nice to these adults, but you're not very nice to, your mom and me. Your kids go spend some time with another family. They come back and the family goes, wow, they were great. They were just so respectful. They were so fun. Thank you. They pitched right in. They worked. They helped. We just had so much fun with your kid. And you're like, wait, who? What? My kid? You're talking about my kid? But we know that's how it works. Because where we place our hope is where we place our trust. It's who we look to. In this story, Saul, King Saul, is not acting very much like a king. His credibility is slipping away day by day. Every day he doesn't go out and take up this challenge, the other Israelites are seeing him and they're like, our king's not doing what a king should do. Chris.
Well, thank you. The thing is, Saul wasn't big enough to physically take on Goliath, and that's okay. But he didn't look to God. He didn't step up with some leadership, some tactics. Like, all right, guys, the next time he comes out, we're going to put 1,000 guys and we're going to rush him. I mean, come on, get some tactic here. He's supposed to be the head of the armies of God, and he should have prayed about it, and he should have got some wisdom, but he just sat and stewed, I guess.
And again, we talked about it quite a bit last week. Just let Goliath set the rules. Why do you let the enemy set the rules? Why are we playing by their rules? Bad idea. That's right. But Saul is to a certain extent starting to lose the trust of the people. Now, you'll remember that God did not want a king over Israel. God wanted to be the king over Israel. He didn't want the people to demand a king because God knew wherever you place your hope, that's where your trust is. God wanted the people to place their hope in Him. God wanted the people to trust Him. You know your Old Testament history well enough to know that, the promise that God made to Abraham. Genesis chapter 12. There's a couple chapters, at least the subject chapters that you ought to have memorized. Genesis 12 is one of them. It's the chapter where God makes the promise to Abraham, I'm going to make you a great nation. I'm going to bless, people will be blessed through you. People who bless you will be blessed. People who curse you will be cursed. God talking about the nations of the world to be blessed through Abraham. God has a very specific plan for His children. He has a very specific plan for the nation of Israel. He's going to bless them. And when He blesses them, He wants the nations around to look and say, wow, who is your God? Who is your God that's protecting you? Who is your God that's blessing you? Who is your God that's strengthening you like this? He didn't want other nations to look around and say, wow, who's your king? God says, you're very unique people. You're my people. And I want the other nations to look and say, who is your God? And of course, the Israelites say, yeah, but we want a king. Because all the cool nations have a king. And we want to be like everyone else. So God tells Samuel, give them a king. They're not going to like it, but give them a king. God wanted to be their king. It's going to become crystal clear, that David never does get confused about who the real king of Israel is. In his victories, in his defeats, through his incredible life, through his flawed reign, David never does lose track of who the real king of Israel is. That identity is never in question. David always realized, especially through his Psalms, and we'll look at a Psalm or two tonight, especially through his writings, David understands his place in God's family.
Which comes into play here because he's already been anointed.
Yep.
So when he shows up to fight, he doesn't, don't you know who I am? But he knows he's, for whatever, I don't know what his understanding was.
Yeah.
But he's not king yet, or he is king, but yet he doesn't try to usurp Saul.
Which is a good thing to keep in mind. When all this is happening with Goliath, David has been anointed. He's been told, you are the next king of Israel. Keep that in your mental hopper too. Okay, let's get back to the story here. We left off, Goliath is challenging the Israelites, and the text says that all of Israel, including King Saul, were dismayed and terrified. Saul and the army are dismayed and terrified at this giant Goliath. Then this kid David shows up with a care package from his big brothers, for his big brothers, and he gets his first glimpse of this giant. And David hears Goliath's speech that he's been given twice a day for 40 days. And he sees Goliath for the first time, and he sees all the people around him, the Israelites, being filled with fear and dismay. But David is not dismayed. David is not terrified. Instead, David is offended. He's not afraid of what Goliath is suggesting. He is offended by what Goliath is doing. He hears that Saul is looking for a champion. Saul is looking for someone who has the nerve to fight this guy. So David starts asking questions. And the questions that David asks give us a great glimpse into his heart and a great glimpse of who does he put his hope in. Where's David's trust? David asked the men standing near him, "What will be done for the man who kills this Philistine and removes this disgrace from Israel?" What's going to be done for the one who kills the Philistine and removes this disgrace? Nobody else saw it that way. Nobody else saw Goliath as a disgrace to Israel. What they saw was a 9-foot killing machine. What everyone else sees is King Saul, who's nowhere to be found. Everyone else sees this as purely a military encounter. This is just a battle. This is just a military thing. David sees it as a disgrace to Israel. Who is this uncircumcised Philistine that he should defy the armies of the living God? Again, nobody else asked that question. Nobody else is seeing it this way. This uncircumcised Philistine. David realizes this guy's outside the covenant. This guy's outside of God's protection. This is God's enemy. By the way, all my life, anytime I've heard a class, a sermon, probably when I've preached sermons on this text, I've always heard the application of God helped David defeat Goliath, and he'll help you defeat your giants too. You think of the giants in your life. God helped David defeat Goliath. God will help you defeat your enemy, your giant as well. And yes, there is merit to that application, but I don't think it quite goes nearly far enough. Because David does not see Goliath as his enemy. He sees Goliath as God's enemy. You say, that's semantics. It might be, but I think it's important. And I think it's significant. David sees Goliath as, that's not my enemy, that's God's enemy. And God wasn't so much helping David defeat his enemy as he was using David to defeat God's enemy. You know, that's a subtle difference, but there's a difference there. David sees Goliath as God's enemy. Who is this uncircumcised Philistine that he should defy the armies of the living God? David is asking, who does this guy think he is? I mean, who does this guy think he is? And more importantly, why isn't anybody doing something about it? Mark.
I don't even have a guess at this answer, but why do you think it was that his first question was, somebody can do this, what do they get out of it?
Good question. Anybody got any thoughts? That was his first question. What's the guy get? Who kills this guy?
I think he'd already made his mind. He's fixing to go for it. He's just wondering what the reward might be. By the way, what would I get paid?
When I kill this guy, what do I do? Yeah, I don't know. Good question.
Well, and it adds, he already knows no one there is doing it. So, I mean, it's like, so not only are they weak, but they can't even see the value of a reward. I don't know. It's just a whole weird, when you think of those times in my life when I didn't respond to some immediately, it only got worse.
Yeah.
And I think that's it. If they would have responded immediately, even if they'd have lost, it'd have been over with. Instead, this drags on for 40 days because they were indecisive and, of course, weren't seeing God.
Yeah.
And remember, David has already been anointed king. So he's probably thinking, what kind of operation is this right here? I mean, y'all can't take care of this? I'm king, but, do I need to step up? Where's the big guys that are supposed to be here?
Yeah.
So he's already thinking towards what's y'all's problem?
Somebody should have done this. We have a king. We
Yeah.
have Jonathan. We have my older brother Eliab, who Samuel said, this got to be the guy because he looks like the guy.
Yeah,
You know,
yeah.
Where
So
are you,
David's saying, I guess it's my time because everybody else is a coward.
Yeah. Yeah. Over here, Matt.
Sorry, first I thought I was loud enough, but that wasn't going to happen.
No, you got to talk into the mic.
So I was looking at the personalities of both of them, what they've shown. Looking at Saul, he waits for the people to make a decision before he acts. Like when he, the other time, he just waited. But David was a man of action. He went ahead and took ahead, conquered what he needed to.
Yeah, great point. Saul's like, somebody needs to step up. David's like, get out of my way, I'm stepping up. Yeah. So David goes to King Saul, and he says, I hear you're looking for a volunteer. And no, I am not a soldier. I haven't, been in a whole lot of bloody battles. I'm not an expert swordsman. I'm not a military legend yet. And Saul's response to David is basically, you're kidding, right? You're joking. Kid, you will be dead before you hit the ground. I mean, it'll be a slaughter. And David tells Saul, okay, wait, true. I'm not a soldier, I get it. I don't have military experience, I get it. I'm just a shepherd, I get it. But when a lion attacked my flock, I grabbed the lion by the mane, by the beard, Scripture says. I killed the lion. I didn't just tell Dad, hey, sorry, that was a lion, what was I going to do? I killed the lion. And then when a bear attacked my flock, I didn't just chalk it up to bad luck. I didn't just like, that's the cost of doing business. I killed the bear. And then he says this, your servant has killed both the lion and the bear. This uncircumcised Philistine will be like one of them because, not because I'm a soldier, not because I have a lot of military experience, but because, and why hasn't anyone else realized this? Because he has defied the armies of the living God. The Lord who delivered me. Hey, king, I'm good, but I'm not that good. The Lord delivered me from the paw of the lion and the paw of the bear, will deliver me from the hand of this Philistine. There is no confusion for David. Again, he is looking at this whole situation like no one else is looking at this situation. It's clear to David, this guy's not taunting us, not just taunting us, he's taunting God. Somebody has to do something about this. Renee.
And when Saul was the leader in fighting for Israel, it was all about Saul. But with David, it's all about God.
Yep. We're going to see that over and over again. Yeah. David's assumption is, you can see this through his entire life. His assumption is, his conviction is, where your hope is, where your trust is. If your hope and your trust is in the Lord, you got nothing to fear. Even when there are things actually to be afraid of. When everyone else is panicking, if your hope and your trust is in the Lord, you really have nothing to fear. So he tells Saul, pick me. I'll do it. Let me kill him. Verse 38. Go ahead, Chris.
Well, this attitude that David has reminds me of something that Braveheart said. Mel Gibson in the
Some
Braveheart
tough
movie.
guy. But going
Yeah, he was a bad dude, and he was about to go and get killed. He had his sentence, and they were going to execute him. And the lady came to him and was talking to him about, let me give you something to numb the pain or whatever. I forget it's a long time ago, but he said this. He says, everybody's got to die sooner or later. Why not now? He had. I know that's.
Don't get us quoting movies.
Well, I'm against that most of the time, but the attitude of a warrior is like, I am going to go fight this thing. I am going to do my best. And I don't care if I die trying. I'm not going to stand here and let this happen. And David had that mindset. He was a warrior, but he was God's warrior. And he knew God was behind him. And he's going to fight this giant if it kills him. He's going to go. And I think
even though he's king, even though he's been anointed king and nobody knows it.
Yeah, but I think that's a rare thought process in our day and age, because most people are scared to death of everything.
Yeah.
We have no backbone and no spine to stand up for what we believe in and what we're going to do, and we just kind of float through life scared and timid like mice. And I'm thrilled to see a hero like David come along and stand up and do something. And I wish more of us would do that.
What would you give for a chance of freedom? There's a lot of ways to tell this part of the story. I don't know of any better way than just to read the text, because the text is so good. You know, let me paraphrase this. I don't want to paraphrase this. Let me embellish this. I don't want to embellish it. It's just so good. So bear with me. We're going to read through the story, the scripture of David killing Goliath. Saul dressed David in his own tunic. He put a coat of armor on him and a bronze helmet on his head. Actually, he put his own armor on him. David fastened on his sword over the tunic and tried walking around, but he was not used to them. I said I'm not going to comment, but I am going to comment every now and then. Saul calls David a boy here. In fact, he calls him, I think, a stripling in the King James Version. You're just a kid. We know that Saul was head and shoulders above everybody else in Israel. Lots of times you see this, paintings, pictures of David versus Goliath, the VBS thing, and you see like a 10-year-old boy out there. But this is someone who could put on a tall man's armor and at least walk around. It wasn't like, whoa, it just swallows you. David didn't say, whoa, it's way too big. What he says is, I'm not used to it. So I throw that out just to say, I don't know how old David is here. And I'm not sure how big he is. He's big enough that he can wear an adult's armor and not just swallow him, because his next comment is, I cannot go in these, he said to Saul, because I'm not used to them. So he took them off. Then he took his staff in his hand, chose 5 smooth stones from the stream, put them in the pouch of his shepherd's bag, and with sling in his hand approached the Philistine. Believe it or not, a sling was actually a very legitimate, dangerous weapon in ancient times. In fact, Chris sent me a little short a couple weeks ago about a guy today using a sling like David would have used with a stone, and it was pretty, I wish I should have downloaded it and showed it, because it's like, whoa. I mean, it's like a gun, hitting things. I mean, they could sling it, and they could sling it. If you remember, in Judges, there were 700 men from the tribe of Benjamin, you might know where I'm about to go, who were left-handed, that could sling a stone and split a hair, is what the text says. 700 elite fighters, left-handed fighters, who could sling a stone and split a hair. So this was a legitimate, violent option. It's not like, well, it's a little kid, doing this. It's not like a slingshot that I used to play with. Meanwhile, the Philistine, with his shield bearer in front of him, kept coming closer to David. Remember, I stood up here on the ladder, 9.5 feet tall, and I had a 12-foot spear representative. And I mentioned that there would also be a shield bearer, somebody carrying a shield the size of a person in front. He looked David over and saw he was only a boy, ruddy and handsome, and he despised him. He said to David, am I a dog that you come at me with sticks? He said it much lower than that, I'm sure. I'm sure it was, am I a dog? The Philistine cursed David by his gods. Come here, he said, and I'll give your flesh to the birds of the air and the beasts of the field. David said to the Philistine, you come against me with sword and spear and javelin, but I come against you in the name of the Lord Almighty, the God of the armies of Israel, whom you defied. I told you one day I'm going to write a book about the coolest sayings in the Bible. What's in yellow is going to be in my book. This is David speaking to Goliath. This day the Lord will hand you over to me, and I will strike you down and cut off your big, ugly head. He didn't say big, ugly, but it's implied, okay? I will cut off your head. Today, I will give the carcasses of the Philistine army, not just your carcass, I'm going to give the carcass of the Philistine army to the birds of the air and the beasts of the earth, and the whole world will know that there is a God in Israel. I think that is one of the coolest statements ever made. It's one of the reasons that you think, man, David, it's one of the reasons he wrote so well. That's how he thought. He thought on a different plane than everybody else. He said, here's what's going to happen. And those gathered here will know that this is not by sword or spear that the Lord saves, for the battle is the Lord's, and he will give all of you into our hands. See, I thought the agreement was, if you beat me, then we'll just surrender to you. If I beat you, then you surrender to us. David said, the birds of the air are going to feast on all of your carcasses. The Lord will give all of you into our hands. David is not allowing Goliath to set the ground rules here. As the Philistine moved closer to attack him, David ran quickly toward the battle line to meet him. No fear. Reaching into his bag and taking out a stone, he slung it and struck the Philistine on the forehead. The stone sank into his forehead and he fell face down on the ground. So David triumphed over the Philistine with a sling and a stone. Without a sword in his hand, he struck down the Philistine and killed him. David ran and stood over him. He took hold of the Philistine's sword, drew it from the scabbard. Obviously, apparently, Goliath didn't even think it was worth pulling out a sword to fight this kid. After he killed him, he cut off his head with a sword. When the Philistines saw that their hero was dead, they turned and ran. Then the men of Israel and Judah surged forward with a shout and pursued the Philistines to the entrance of Gath and to the gates of Ekron. Their dead were strewn along the Sharon road to Gath and Ekron. When the Israelites returned from chasing the Philistines, they plundered their camp. David took the Philistines' head and brought it to Jerusalem, and he put the Philistines' weapons in his own tent. Any comments on that? You know that story.
I just wonder what happened to the armor bearer with the shield that
What
should have
happened
been.
to the armor bearer with the shield?
Could he not protect?
Well, he didn't protect him right here, I guess. He didn't protect him right between the eyes. Yeah, and I guess when all the Philistines ran, he would probably be one running. Yeah, he didn't seem to want to stop Goliath from getting his head cut off. Randy.
I thought the Philistines were supposed to give up, and
Exactly.
they didn't keep up their end of the deal.
Exactly, not at all. In fact, the Israelites had to fight them anyway. They should have done it 40 days earlier, right? Yeah. By the way, later on, do you have something, Charlene? Yeah, I'm sorry.
I used to live on a lake, and all the fishermen, when they caught their biggest fish, they would have it immortalized and hang on their wall somewhere in their house. Well, I was just thinking, he couldn't really want to do that with the head, but I would want to keep the sword as a souvenir. Yeah.
That sword's going to show back up. That sword is definitely going to show back up. Later on, when David is on the run from King Saul, it's Ahimelech, isn't it? Nob, the priest. David comes in and says, I need food and I need a weapon. And the priest says, well, all I have is showbread. I'll take it. All I have behind this ephod here, wrapped in a blanket, is Goliath's sword that you took, David. David says, I'll take it. And David leaves with Goliath's sword. Because David, I'm pretty sure I'm right on this, David says there's none like it in all the land. Now, my thing with that is, if his spear was supposed to be 12 feet tall, and the end of the spear was the same weight as a competition shot put, I wouldn't be able to wield that. David somehow felt like he could use Goliath's sword. I've heard some theologians say, well, it must have been more of a dagger than a sword, because it would have been so big that David couldn't handle it. I don't have an answer for that. But yeah, his sword is going to show back up, and David's going to be in possession of it. As Saul watched David going out to meet the Philistine, he said to Abner, commander of the army, Abner, whose son is that young man? I'm sorry, Tyler. You got to shout out or something, get my attention.
Yeah, so I just want to make sure what I'm said is actually heard on the mic for, for the stream and stuff. I just want to say that about the sword strength thing. If he is able to, using a sling back then, that's not an easy thing to do. You have to be pretty skilled with it.
Yeah.
And if he's strong enough to sling a rock that hard in someone's forehead that it makes a dent if it presses in, he's definitely strong enough to hold a big sword.
Well, he cut the head off. So he obviously
that,
was
that
able
too.
to.
That would also take a lot of strength.
That too.
Flesh and bone are surprisingly strong.
Yes, they are.
Bone is actually one of the hardest materials in the world.
Abner, whose son is this man? Abner replied, as sure as you live, O king, I do not know. The king said, find out whose son this young man is. As soon as David returned from killing the Philistine. Now think about this. David has just gone from shepherd to immediately national hero. I mean, there's no stepping out of the limelight now. His 15 seconds of fame have just turned into 40 years of fame, okay? He has just killed Goliath. Think about what's going on in the Israelites' camp here. The Philistine champion who can't be defeated has just been defeated. There's celebration. It's happened. You know, we've routed them. We've killed them. David comes walking back. As soon as David returned from killing the Philistine, Abner took him and brought him before Saul, with David still holding the Philistine's head. So David comes walking back to the king holding this big ugly head, okay? Which is kind of gross. There's no kind of, it is gross. You know, it's disturbing to us. But here comes this young guy holding a head. Whose son are you, young man? Saul asked him. David said, I am the son of your servant Jesse of Bethlehem. Now, to me, again, we've already established David has already been anointed the king. He knows it. Saul doesn't know it, but David knows it. I'm going to be the next king of Israel. God wants me to be the next king of Israel. He comes in holding the head of the guy who couldn't be beat. I just killed him. I cut off his head. And the king asks me, who are you? Seemed like it would have been the perfect time to say, my name is Maximus Aurelius, commander of the armies of the north, true servant to the emperor, to the true emperor, Marcus Aurelius, father to a murdered son, husband to a murdered wife, and I will have my vengeance in this life or the next. Wouldn't it have been the perfect time for David to say, here's who I am. You want to know who I am? I'm the son of Jesse. I am the next rightful king of Israel, chosen by God, anointed by Samuel to unite Israel under the banner of heaven. That's who I am. Seems like that would have been the perfect time. But David says, I'm the son of your servant Jesse. This humility of David, it just keeps coming through in so many situations. Renee.
But didn't Saul already know who David was? He knew when he came to play the harp for him who he was.
We talked at length about that last week.
Okay, I was in Boston.
And to be honest,
sorry.
And my conclusion was, I don't know. Yes, he did. The timeline's kind of strange. It's a head scratcher.
Okay.
Because he did come and play.
Yeah.
It sounds like, it certainly looks like he did spend time playing the harp in Saul's courts. Yep. And now later on, that Saul and Abner both don't recognize him. In fact, Saul is told there's a son of Jesse who plays the harp really well. I'll send for him. Go ahead, Dave. Explain it.
I'm still convinced, like I was last week, that when he came and played for Saul, Saul was in distress. He wasn't looking around trying to figure out who was who and what was what. And couple that with the fact that he's just come in from battle and he's holding a severed head. You know, it's like, you know, no way to connect the two.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know the answer. I really don't. Tyler.
Sometimes my parents will be like, oh, you remember so-and-so? And I'm like, who? Apparently someone I've met before many years ago, but I don't remember him.
And it very well might be that. You're right.
Of course, I only met them for a short period of time, which doesn't help. So
And you put all those things, Saul's
That's-
in distress. There's a lot of servants. David, shows up. Time goes by. Maybe he's changed. Maybe he's grown a beard. Maybe it's not chronologically listed. I don't know.
the more people you have to know, the harder it is to remember all of them, especially the people you talk to less. I can only imagine what it's like being a leader of a nation.
Okay.
Imagine how many people you'd have to know, how many people you meet every day that you're like, I can't remember all of them. Especially the people who you are, maybe more separated from you
Yeah.
compared to like an advisor or someone.
One thing we know for sure, from this day forward, Saul knows who David is. He's never again going to wonder, who's that guy? He knows David now. Psalm 91 is an interesting psalm. We don't know what David did the night before he committed to fight Goliath, the morning that he went out to meet him. But I want you to listen to Psalm 91 in the context of, could David have written this the night before he went to fight Goliath? It's pure conjecture, okay? But it was written at some point, and it certainly fits this event. Let me just read Psalm 91 to you, but listen to it in the context of, maybe it was written by David before he fights Goliath. Here's what David wrote. There's a little bit of, I'll go ahead and just, total disclosure here. There's a little bit of discussion about, did David write this or did Moses write this? Most theologians believe David wrote it. Here's what it says. You can read it for yourself or just listen. Those who live in the shelter of the Most High will find rest in the shadow of the Almighty. This I declare of the Lord. He alone is my refuge, my place of safety. He is my God, and I am trusting Him. For He will rescue you from every trap and protect you from fatal plague. He will shield you with His wings. He will shelter you with His feathers. His faithful promises are your armor and protection. Do not be afraid of the terrors of the night, nor fear the dangers of the day, nor dread the plague that stalks in the darkness, nor the disaster that strikes at midday. Though 1,000 fall at your side, though 10,000 are dying around you, those evils will not touch you. But you will see it with your eyes. You will see how the wicked are punished. If you make the Lord your refuge, if you make the Most High your shelter, no evil will conquer you, no plague will come near your dwelling, for He orders His angels to protect you wherever you go. They will hold you with their hands to keep you from striking your foot on a stone. You will trample down lions and poisonous snakes. You will crush fierce lions and serpents under your feet. The Lord says, I will rescue those who love me. I will protect those who trust in my name. When they call on me, I will answer. I will be with them in trouble. I will rescue them and honor them. I will satisfy them with long life and give them my salvation. I don't know when that psalm was written, but it certainly fits with David's attitude, with David's heart, as he is getting to fight the guy that can't be beaten. And he is so set on this battle belongs to the Lord. What David says before the fight, we do know what he says there, this battle belongs to the Lord. You come at me with spear and sword. I come at you in the name of the Lord. This battle belongs to the Lord. Let me get one more slide in, because I don't want to start with this one next week. David and the head of Goliath. Have you seen that picture before? Anybody else seen that? It's somewhat of a famous, from the Italian Baroque artist Caravaggio in the early 1600s. There's a couple different copies of it. That one's in Rome. The painter was forced to flee Rome under allegations of murder. It's thought that he painted that as a gift to Pope Paul V, trying to get forgiveness and be able to return to Rome. Goliath there, interesting little tidbit, that's Caravaggio. That's the artist. He painted himself as Goliath. But I show you that to say this. I looked up some art critiques of that painting. I am not an artist. I am not a lover of art. I'm one of those guys, I like what I like, But I appreciate people who can do it, and I appreciate people who can see things that I can't see. But listen to what one art historian said. It's a very interesting painting, a description. David is perturbed. His expression, mingling sadness and compassion. The decision to depict him as pensive and resigned rather than jubilant creates an unusual psychological bond between him and Goliath. And then you can't possibly see it there, but it's supposed to be the sword of Goliath, which doesn't look big enough to me. But there's some Latin words which wouldn't have been on the sword. But the artist put in humility over pride, etched on the sword, which Goliath would not be carrying a sword that said humility over pride. But I thought it interesting that this historian said his expression mingled with sadness and compassion. And my question for you is, what do you think Jesus? What do you think David felt after he killed Goliath as he's walking around with the head of this giant? Was he pensive? Was he... tell me what and why.
Well, I think just based off of how David has responded earlier, he wasn't like, I did this. He was like, this is what God has done. You know, God has used me to do this. And there's just, I don't see how he could lose that train when it's so well embedded in his psyche, I guess you'd say.
Okay.
But
What do you think, Mark?
There could have been a sense of, some sort of frustration with, look what I had to do that you had the power to do all along. It didn't have to be me, but you were all too scared.
Yeah, I didn't really think frustration, but I see your point. That, here's what God used me to do. Why didn't you allow God to use you to do this? That's a good insight. Dave.
All right, I'm going to go the other direction. We seem to assign to biblical characters supernatural qualities that they don't fear, they don't have concerns, they make these statements and, they're just oblivious to the things that normal people feel. Maybe there's a sense of relief.
Okay.
I stepped out and I did this thing and God came through.
Okay. Absolutely. Back up here to Melody.
From what I've heard from people who have been in war, there is a sadness in having to take a life.
Okay.
And to watch the light go out that you have caused. It even if you have to, it's still painful. And so I think that painting depicts that. Mm-hmm. Look what I had to do, what you made me do.
Interesting.
I don't know.
Interesting. I don't know. My thought, a young guy coming off this unbelievable adrenaline rush, I think I would be sky high. I think I would be like, can you believe this? Can you believe what just happened? God did it. He's certainly giving God all the credit. But I think David would be celebrating. God's enemies got what they deserved. Jimmy.
Yeah, I think David was kind of, may have been kind of full of himself, but to the Lord. But one of his brothers, said that he was kind of arrogant.
Yeah.
So he, you don't go out and kill bears and lions and not, consider yourself, you're the younger brother, but I'm just as much of a man as any of you all are.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
Okay.
But he gave all the credit to God.
Yeah.
But he had to feel good about it,
Yeah. If I did what David did after getting put down by my brothers, hey Randy, take a look. That was me and God, not you and God. Yeah. Last one, Chris.
Jimmy brought up the bears and the lions, and I think that helps to understand his mindset.
Yeah.
Because I don't know if any of you have ever thought about, I think about weird things, but I've actually had to fight some big animals, wrestle some cows, do stuff like that. And when you take on a lion, the only way you're going to kill that lion as if you're meaner than he is. If you're going to take on a bear, you have to have a mindset worthy of taking on a bear, or he will eat you. This man had a mindset that didn't back down from a lion and a bear and a giant. That's a different kind of mindset that most of us walk around with.
Yeah.
And I think that helps you get into his mind, because when a lion's charging you, if you don't grab him exactly right, you know, in this case he grabbed him by the beard, but he must have had a pocket knife with him or something. But you've got to be strategic about how you handle that, and you've got to be aggressive. Same way with this giant. I don't think he went at him with a little small pebble in this sling. I think it was a giant rock, big enough to sling with some power, and he was a skilled slinger. And so he didn't just go after Goliath with hope. He went after him with intent.
Yeah.
And that is a mindset that it takes to do these kinds of things. And I think most of us don't have that mindset.
Yeah. I take it back. Renee has the last comment. Actually, I'm going to have the last comment, but go ahead.
I've never I used to get into fights when I was in school, but I didn't volunteer. No, my mother told Jimmy 2 days before we got married, Renee used to fight boys, but it was, I had to fight when I did. But I remember once talking to Jimmy about going into a big game, and he would always say, if you're afraid when you drive up to the stadium, stay on the bus. You have to know that you have the power to win, or you will never win. And he would always say, I'd say, well, how do you feel when you drive up to Alabama? He said, we believed we could win.
And you did?
No, but you have to believe you are going to win when you go into a battle.
Well, it goes back to what we started with. Who do you trust? Where's your trust?
Yeah.
Where are you putting your hope? And to Chris's point, David was the same guy when he was by himself with the sheep. Mm-hmm. Total obscurity. Nobody's watching. He's the same guy trusting in the same deliverance there in the middle of nowhere with no one watching as he is in the valley of blood with everybody watching. He's the same guy, trusting the same God, counting on putting his hope in the same outcome. Good stuff. Well, again, we didn't get quite as far as I hoped. Next week, actually, I told you last week, now I promise you next week, this story that we know so well, I've still got questions. I've got questions about this story. Now that we know the story and we've talked about it at length, I've got questions. And I'm hoping that you all can help me with some answers. So thanks for coming out on a rainy Wednesday night. Hope you can come back next week. I do want to mention two things. I got a text from Beulah today saying, among the takeaway was, things are going great. God is just really blessing us. Things are going wonderful. Keep us in your prayers. Harry is coming home at the end of this week. Beulah and Eric are staying another 2 weeks to keep doing some evangelism. So be sure and keep their efforts and their ministry in your prayers. Also, Martha got a message from LaMonica tonight that she wasn't able to get out because of some rain damage at her home. And she said, hey, just keep me in your prayers. So we'll check up and see exactly what's going on there. But keep LaMonica in your prayers as well. Let's go ahead and we'll close with a prayer. Father, again, thank you for so many proofs of who you are and what you do. And as we read these stories that are true stories, they really happened. He really said it and he really did it. Might we be reminded and encouraged to have that same kind of trust and that same kind of hope. These aren't just stories. These are testimonies of who you are and what you want done. And as your chosen people, as children of yours, may our hope and our trust be in you. Father, I pray that you would continue to bless our mission team while they're in India. We'd continue to give them safety, continue to give them good health, success, and an open heart to share your word, as I know they're doing. and I pray that you continue to be with them. We're prayerful for LaMonica tonight as she's just experienced some problems because of the storm, and as we kind of check on that, pray for everybody that needs you in a special way. We know that there's a lot of people in this family that need you in a special way today, and we trust you to respond like a loving Father. Thank you that we were able to meet together tonight. I pray that you would keep us safe now as we leave for our homes. Help us to be more like Jesus. It's in his name that I pray. Amen.